I believe that storytelling has the power to transform our lives in the most fascinating and unexpected ways. Over my career as a journalist and social entrepreneur, I met individuals whose passion and values are making this world a better place. I am Elizabeth Filippouli, and I invite you to hear the stories of some amazing, inspirational people.
I would like to go a little bit back and ask you, how did it all start? How does a young girl from Malaysia or from any country, as a matter of fact, get into the tech world? What was it that planted that?
Okay, so I am a science geek. I just want to say this, that from very young, because I come from a village. It is literally a village in Malaysia. And my parents were teachers, and we didn't have a life of luxury. But I do remember distinctively seeing the television for the first time at a neighbor's house. And I think at that time I was about 5 years old. And I remember being so fascinated with the little people that was appearing on the TV screen. And I was trying to look behind it. I said, where did these people come from? And I think that was when my fascination with science began. And my favorite subjects in school were always things like physics and maths. And that was really not common because, a lot of girls shy away from that, but I just loved it. And until today, I propagate to a lot of girls to not have this stereotyping, not to have this barrier about science and that science is not for women. So that's how I began, and I was one of the pioneers in computer science. I got a scholarship to go to Australia to do my studies, and I got a scholarship on the physics subject because that was my favorite. But when I went there, my seniors were advising me to change the course to something new then called computer science. So I took a double major in computer science and applied maths, and that was how it started. Of course, technology then was so different than technology now. Then technology was very much like a back room. The kind of programming and coding I was exposed to, I had to write the codes and then send it to a huge machine that is like, machines that fit in the room of like half a ballroom, and which now the computing power is equal to what you have in the smartphone. But now is where technology is so pervasive. Technology touches every aspect of your life, and this is when I sometimes feel that it's like coming of age of technology is where we are right now, and I feel excited and also a sense of obligation because I understand technology. I'm passionate about technology, but I'm more passionate about what technology can do to change lives. I always tell people that if a girl from a small village in Malaysia can be where I am right now and travel the world, and literally change my life. So it can do the same for almost everybody.
We're always talking about the importance of a supportive family ecosystem. Were your parents encouraging, supportive of, this little girl who was fascinated by their television set and very intrigued about what was going on behind this, magic box? Were they supportive, and did they encourage you? Or because it was a different era perhaps, and you're talking about, a village, always in smaller communities, the culture is very different. Of course, parents have big dreams for their kids, but at the same time, they're more keen to try and channel them towards professions that are going to be secure, or perhaps for a girl, even marriage.
Yes. So I'm lucky to have a mother that is, I would say she didn't use this word, but I would describe it. She truly believed in women empowerment, and she wanted her. I'm the eldest of 3 siblings, and my mother had always wanted me to do the best that I can ever do. And what that best is doesn't matter, but just do your best is what she's always said. And they were teachers, so education to them was very important. In fact, that was because they wanted me to get the best education. We moved from a very comfortable life at school as teachers in a small town was very comfortable, but in pursuit of the best education, my mother made the decision to uproot the whole family to a city center in Kuala Lumpur, because that was where the best education is, and she believed that we need to be prolific in English. So so that was the decision that she took, and because of that, we had a very difficult. I mean, financially, it was very difficult because my father went back to university to pursue his degree. We had 3 kids in school and on one teacher's salary in one of the most expensive districts in the country at that time. So, and that drove a lot. I mean, a lot of people ask me, you know, because I have what drives, and I always say this: for a woman, it's always very challenging to move up. It's always challenging to move up for everybody, but for a woman, it's even more challenging. So you need to have that driving force. So yeah, my mother, especially my parents, are very supportive. They were, of course, they wanted me to become an architect or an engineer or a doctor, you know. But I think in the end, they just said that just do the best that you can, and to do the best, you must really have the passion for it. And I think they allowed all of their kids to pursue what they think they can be best at. And that was why I chose science, and I chose computer science. And that was a very, come to think of it, it must have been a very difficult choice for her, because she didn't know what computer science, what that entailed at that point of time. But she allowed me to make that decision.
And so you're in Australia and you complete your degree.
Yeah.
What's next? What was your first job? Who hired you to do what?
You know, when I graduated, it was the recession. It was in the mid 1980s. So you won't believe, my first job was actually in selling cars. You know, it was so difficult to get jobs. So I just took whatever I could. And I was doing marketing and sales and selling cars, right? But that was for a short while. Then I went into programming. And then from there, you know, I worked into, I got a job into Hewlett Packard. That was, you know, it still is one of the top tech companies. And I moved my way up there from a junior sales executive, marketing manager, country manager, you know. So and that's how I moved. And I spent most of my career in American multinationals. So HP, Dell, where I was a CEO for, and I was the managing director for Microsoft. So that's how I progressed. And after being the managing director for Microsoft, I decided to take on something different. So I went into public service. So I was a CEO for a government agency. It's called the Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation. And that was when I was really driven by the passion to make a difference. And this was an organization that has been mandated to look into digital innovation and how it can give economic empowerment to the country.
How was Malaysia when you left to go to Australia for your studies? So the 18, 19-year-old. And how did Malaysia develop? Because I know, and I am very well aware of the tremendous progress and the tremendous focus that Malaysia has given to the cyber world. And I think there is also a separate city, if I'm not mistaken, Cyberjaya.
Yes, yes.
And so it is very pioneering. So it was an ecosystem that you were able to thrive with your background, your expertise, your career in the private sector, but multinationals. How do you compare that shift in Malaysia?
That's an interesting question. This is it's changed so much. Malaysia has changed so much, and I think the most personal anecdote that I can cite is that when I came back, people were still. I remember being from Australia, where there was a high appreciation for civic society, right? And when I came back, people were not queuing up. I remember going to pay, shopping, and people were not queuing up, and I made it upon myself to be this queue up advocate, that was the Malaysia that I came back to. But over the years, I think we have progressed tremendously in terms of economic development. We have even politically, we have made some, we made some milestones also from having a same government for 61 years in power, and then having that change being made just in the last elections 3 years ago. And from a societal perspective, I think some things have really improved, but I think that there is a whole middle income group that has matured, and I must say that I'm one of those, because I came from the village, and I was given a scholarship that was part of an affirmative action to uplift the well-being, the economic, social, and economic well-being of people from the rural areas, the marginalized, and to be able to identify talent that can be leaders of the future. And I was privy to that, and I was given the privilege, and I took a scholarship and became a leader. Right. So in many aspects, Malaysia has changed, but in certain aspects, things remain the same. One of the concerns that we have right now is about the income gap, right? Although poverty in Malaysia has been eradicated, which is good, but and I think this is something that we have a concern for across the world, which is the rich and the gap between the rich and the poor. Although relatively speaking, though, I think Malaysia, because of this very strong middle income group that actually came up, people like me who came up from a very strong affirmative action, is maybe it's not as pronounced as what you will see in the US or what you see in other parts of the world. Yeah, but I'm proud of how my country has developed. I think in the tech focus, you're right, in the 1996, in the late 1990s, we had one of the most visionary initiatives. It was called the Multimedia Super Corridor. And I remember being part, I was with HP at that time. And I remember going across the world, talking to the people, the leadership, the global leadership in HP about what this was, because this was so visionary and had so much of foresight. It was so forward thinking. And I remember being really proud about it. And many years later, the company that I was the agency, the Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation, was set up originally to develop and manage this multimedia super corridor. So I felt like I almost came to a full circle. But Malaysia right now, we still have a very strong focus towards technology, which is why I am, very happy about it and being very much part of the whole ecosystem, being one of the industry veterans, right? But I'm also excited about ASEAN, the whole of Southeast Asia. I have business ventures in Indonesia, which has got so much of potential, so much more that can be done in the area of technology. And one of the things that I mentioned earlier, I have a sense of obligation, because I kind of see what technology can do, and more importantly, what impact it can have if you don't ride on the bandwagon. I always use this analogy of, when in the area where, cars came into fore, and cars eventually replaced horses, right? So what happened to those people who only knew their life and their work to be maintaining horses and building horse carriages? So when cars came in, if they had not made that shift, then they would have been so disrupted. So I always tell that innovation is going to come fast and furious. Which end of the stick are you going to be at? Are you going to be in the disrupted, or are you going to be riding the exciting wave of innovation, for the betterment of yourself, for the family, for the country? So sense of obligation is still there.
You're a thought leader in that space, and an international thought leader, actually. So in this world, which is very threatened by the coronavirus or any other, if you like, invisible or visible threat, or perhaps sometimes the threat is there, but we don't realize it because we tend to ignore it or not taking it seriously. How do you think that technology can help at this stage, moving on from that crisis, crafting the new normal? What do you see as a role of technology being in healthcare, in other areas, in collaboration, education?
The impact of technology and the benefits of technology, I think, is just getting more pronounced. And I have been very vocal about this, about the fact that, a lot of the impact that technology could make has been accelerated. So I'll give you an example. One classic example is, the work from home, or the remote workforce, or the distributed workforce concept, where it has got so much of benefits in terms of carbon footprint, in terms of cost efficiency, in terms of flexibility, should have been very much part and parcel of a workforce management strategy. And technology has always been there. Technology has been ready to enable this change, but it did not really take on, it did not get that inflection point simply because of a mindset shift that is required, a behavioral shift, a sustained behavioral shift that required a mindset change, that required a cultural change. So that didn't happen, but lo and behold, the impact of the pandemic made it something that you have to do. And now you see this take-up rate. I mean, look at Zoom, for instance, has been around forever, but I think the stats was saying that by end of December, they had like 10 million subscribers. And then by March, it was 200 million subscribers. And then by April, it was something like 400 million subscribers. So the technology has obviously been ready, but it was just not being adopted. So now you can see it coming to point. I think post-pandemic, it should be the case where this is going to continue. In the new normal, we'll see a much higher percentage of this technology and this new behavior being adopted. Another key area is in the area of e-commerce. I've always been a strong propagator for e-commerce or online business. I've always said that there will not be any e-commerce in the future because all of commerce will be e. When I was with this government agency, one of the big initiatives, the big thrust that we encountered on was to have this, to have the new generation of people, of students coming out of universities must be digitally native. They must be online trading, or online business must be native in them. They must know it as a native skill set. So one of what we did was to actually embed this online business, e-commerce into schools, into technical schools curriculum, into universities curriculum, and we had such an impact around this. So I think e-commerce is going to be, is going to be the most profound new normal, and it has got such opportunity to uplift the social economic standing of especially women in the urban areas. Mothers who need to stay home, can find market access through e-commerce. So I'm really passionate about that. And so I think absolutely AI is where I am most passionate about right now. People talk about the massive disruption force that is the fourth industrial revolution. It's true. Yes, there'll be things like blockchain, things like virtual reality, augmented reality. I see them coming into mainstream, but nothing is going to be as impactful and as pervasive as AI is. So, like for instance, if there was this in Wuhan when the pandemic was at its peak. Can you imagine that they built this hospital? I mean, a lot of people know about how China built this hospital within days. I think it was like 45 days or 60 days. But what is not, perhaps not as well acknowledged, or maybe not so well known, is the fact that it was very much powered with an AI technology. Because can you imagine getting those thousands of people and reading the CT scans? And if you read the CT scans, by a radiologist is going to take ages, and you will not, it will take days, if not hours. But this is one of the things that was done, is really an AI-driven solution that is able to read the CT scans and is able to do the diagnosis, whether they are COVID or otherwise. And then it's also able to then look into, the treatment of it, the recommended treatment of it. And this was a very important, a very critical factor in ensuring that you are able to treat the patients in a much more, in that kind of volume. And then contact tracing also use technology, and what China did was to really be able to use the kind of telco or the kind of phones, is able to identify dots of everybody who carries a phone, and a SIM card is able to be identified. So when somebody is infected, you're able to do the contact tracing, which typically you would do through phone calls, right? But if you do through phone calls, it's only based on what I know. If let's say I'm the infected person, touch wood, let's say I'm an infected person, then I would only know who I met. But what if I had stood at an at a train station, and there were many people, strangers that I don't know of, right? But with the system, with the system that is AI enabled, they'll be able to look into the infected person. Where did you travel? Where have you traveled? And and who is that dot with the SIM card? Who is that dot that was within maybe 1 meter for more than 10 minutes? I mean, so that has got a much higher risk. So then you'll be able to then feedback to say that, okay, this person has got this higher risk. And then if the person so wish to, then can convert the dot into a person. So this is the kind of technology that is available right now. And it can be, the technology is so easily done. But of course, in the area of what I just mentioned, for instance, you got to look into the regulatory component, you got to look into the whole PDPA, the privacy and so on. So I think, so in summary, I would say that yes, the pandemic will accelerate the adoption of technology. It will be simply because there is sometimes no more choice right now. So you just do a big, what was it, switch on to change behavior, to change. It's a forced behavioral change. So we shouldn't waste a pandemic to make those changes that we know are going to come. So sorry, I get so passionate when I talk about technology. So stop me anytime if I'm talking.
No, I would never stop you, because it's fascinating to hear what you have to say. And of course, you're talking about the future. And that is tremendous, because I always thought that there is a great, tremendous, unique opportunity in this crisis to accelerate change, accelerate progress, lead people towards, social impact. And talking about social impact, you have spoken about AI with a heart. And I understand that you're very conscious about supporting others, supporting societies. So how do you interpret that? What manifestations do you see AI acquiring in order to be able to be utilized, rather, in ways that it can support societies and solve problems?
Yes. So, and I've spoken about this, and I'm really passionate about it. AI is a tool, and you will have, some brilliant people in the lab somewhere that is going to be, churning out even more and more sophisticated. Chances are technology is so far ahead that you need adoption will always be on a catch-up mode. So a few concerns of mine is that because AI is so powerful, it's so powerful that Vladimir Putin has been quoted to say that the country that dominates AI will dominate the world. And this is where my first concern comes in, which is, will there be AI divide? Will it make it more pronounced, the divide that we have between the technology haves and the technology have-nots? So that is one aspect of it, and that is why I'm almost like a mission to make sure that everybody understands. And how do you make AI to be not something that people look at and people say, oh, that's not for me, let's just have some people in the lab doing something about it, I'll just see, so that is one concern. The other concern is that, with any innovation, I always say AI is a tool. And the tool is always used. You look at any innovation, from roads, to electricity, right? There is always the innovation, but the innovation lands to the world through motivations of humans. So motivations of human, people, this goes from the beginning of time. Humans are motivated only by a few factors, and that has not changed much. Humans are motivated by economic returns, for power. That is how you see, countries, politicians making, in the race in that respect is there. Then you have AI for good. So how do we, and there's always the forces. So that, so the forces will still come to play. And this is where we have to make sure that, we don't leave it to the few people. It has to be pervasive so that the balance will always be there. There will always be the balance. There will always be good guys, bad guys, greedy guys in the world, right? So you got to make sure that this innovation gets into the hands of as many of them so that the balance will be there. Otherwise, then you could have a skew, and chances are the skew will not be towards the AI for good. The skew will be AI for power and AI for just pure greed. So those are the two main concerns that I have right now, and that is why I'm on a mission to just simplify AI, and that is why the company that I'm with, and SKYMIND, is also in one of the companies. I think it's the only company in the world that is really looking at AI in a very holistic manner. And that is why I have become involved, because Ellie, I'm at a point of time in my life and I feel blessed that I don't have to do anything that I don't want to do. So I only do things that I believe in and passionate about.
You are someone who's very recognized in your industry, in your country, internationally, really, in the space and industry that you have decided to dedicate your energy to. How important is recognition for women, and how do you feel that we need to support more women? What are the ways to encourage and support more women?
Yeah, I have always been, I came into this industry where I'm always the only woman. I'm so used to coming into the room and being the only woman. And it's very lonely, but I've adapted, and and because of that, I am also, apart from the champion for technology, I'm also a huge advocate and champion for women empowerment. And I do that for two purposes. Driven from two angles. First is personally, because I know how difficult it was, my journey, and if I can make, with the bullets that I have taken, if I can share that to make it an easier journey for another woman, I would gladly do that, and I want to do that. But I also, another reason is because I truly, truly believe in the power of diversity. And I believe in the power of diversity, the richness that diversity brings to the table. And this is undisputed, because there are enough proof points to say that with women participation, the performance of a company, a country even, there is a correlation, direct correlation to participation of women in the workforce to the economic outcome. So it is just about the facts, about the science. So I say that when a company champions women empowerment, it's not about them being good or being a CSR. It's just because it is for the survival of it. And I believe in it so much because I've experienced it. Always my best performance in any organization is when I have a very good balance of diversity, starting with gender, then next comes racial, next comes experience, next comes age, so mindset, thinking. So I truly believe in this. But the first layer of diversity is gender diversity. So that is what I champion. And it's very important because, like I said, of the diversity, but also because women also has got so much of multiplier impact in terms of influence. Women with the impact on the family, with the impact of consumer purchasing, and so if there is not that proportionate participation of women in decision making, and then there is a balance and there's an imbalance. So that is why I champion this tremendously. And you know, in Malaysia, for instance, it was in the year, I think it was in the year 2010 that we came up. It was a government policy, and I remember being part of the team that was working with the women minister at that time to create not a quota, but to create a target to have 30% of women in board positions. You know, I think fast forward, it was then at 11%. So no, I believe at that time it was 7%, and then it went to 15%, and now I think we are at about 20+%. Not at the 30% yet, but at least making that kind of progress.
If I were to ask you, what is the biggest lesson you have taken from such a successful career journey? If you were to summarize in a paragraph or two, or it doesn't really matter how long, but I would like you to reflect and share with us what has been the most important wisdom that you have gained through this extremely engaging journey.
Oh, Ali, that is such a wonderful question. I think it's back to what I mentioned earlier, which is you just got to have passion for what you do. In my own personal journey, in the first, you know, I was very driven, and I always ask this question: why are you so driven? What made you to be so driven? You know, but I do admit in the beginning it was because I wanted to have financial stability, because I came from, you know, it was. There were times when we didn't have enough money to put food on the table. So initially it was just about, I don't ever want to worry about money ever in my life. That was what drove me a lot, you know, to take care of me and also my parents, who I now take care of, and very happy to be able to take them for holidays, and, you know, to not have them ever to be in want. I don't know whether that makes sense, to not be in want of anything. So, but that only lasted for a while. I mean, until a level, because, you know, I would say that money is always a function of, it's a state of mind. It's never be enough if you keep on wanting more and more. Then in the end, what sustained me after you cross over that financial security was what I was looking for. Then it's about passion. So that's my lesson, is that be passionate about what it doesn't matter what you do, even if you are in music, you know, whether you are, whatever that you do, you must have that passion, because that is the thing that drives you. So that's number one. And I think the other lesson is about being authentic to who you are. Because, you know, I remember when I climb up the ladder, people say that, oh, I'm too aggressive. You know, you step on too many toes. You're too vocal, right? If I had, you know, succumbed to that, I don't know what kind of person I would be, and I will never be the best at that, because that's not me, right? So I think being authentic and understanding who you are, because I've always known that I am a person who's passionate, a person who is very expressive, right? And I turn that into something that is to my strength. Of course, you have to tone it down, you know, because if you are too expressive, then you might, you know, you could be too disruptive as well. So learning over the years, but anchoring yourself to who you are. I think that is the only, because you can only do you. And that's why I always say, just do you, be the best version of you. That's all that you can do, right? And be it, you know, that's me. That's what you see, that's what you get, right? So I think those are the two things. And maybe the third one is kind of related. It's about the fact that people, you know, being a leader, and being a leader is just, there's a difference between being a manager and being a leader. And there was a painful lesson that I learned. I mean, well, it was a useful lesson. And this is being a manager, to me, and how I describe it, is that being a manager is to get someone to do what you want them to do. Being a leader means that you get somebody to want to do what you want them to do. So, so being a manager is just, okay, you got to do this, this, and this, and this. But to be a leader, you must really understand what motivates them, go inside of them and inspire them to be the best version of who they can be. And that is a more sustained, and that is the only way. You cannot be a leader if you want to make big impact in this world or in your organization. So I think those are the three, or to reflect back, those are the three things that I would really anchor to what I've told. And I always often get this question, so what will you tell your 23 or 21-year-old version? And I always, something that is a consistent, I suggest, I'll just tell her to chill. Just chill and have fun,
I hear you, and that is very important because as you know, young women, we are so insecure because we don't know what lies ahead of us. We're constantly under judgments. We're constantly under some form of patronizing, not necessarily by people who, are our bosses, but very often by our families, our loved ones.
Ourselves too, our insecurity and our expectation to be perfect. Have you heard about this this anecdote about how there is a job, there's a job description of 10 requirements of job description, and the guy goes in there and says, okay, I've got 7 out of 10, I'm all for it. But a woman goes in there and says, oh, I only have 7 out of 10, I can't go for it. Have you heard of that? And you know what? Unfortunately, it's so true. And when I mentor women right now, that's the first thing that I have to, I encourage them, instead of being perfect at what you do. And that's what sometimes, I talk a lot and I think a lot about why women are not moving up. Sometimes they go to the middle, to either entry level, middle management, but the top, the leakage, of going all the way up to the top is too big. It's so big. So I always analyze and I always ask this question: why is that so? So my honest answer is that it's a function of external factor, where organizations and society do not respect, do not acknowledge, and do not address some of the unique requirements or uniqueness of women, leaders. But also a lot of, often also, maybe equally so, is also the women themselves not, leaning in. Sheryl Sandberg's leaning in is something that I could really relate to, because women just not leaning in and saying that, okay, I'm going to do it because I want whatever that I'm doing right now, I want to do it 10 out of 10. It's the perfection. So I often challenge and I often give homework to my mentees to say that, can you do this? Can you make it an 8 out of 10? And the 2 out of 10, you spend time to do networking. I'm a big champion of this too. Networking for women has to be a different agenda. Like networking, a lot of time is going after work. A lot of times, in the men's world, in the traditional men's world, networking means playing golf. Of course, women, we just, number one, we don't have time for that because we have many other things to juggle. But also, we don't like to do that either. But then there must be a different kind of platform for women networking, which I often lend my support to a lot of these women networking initiatives.
You mentioned imperfection before, and I would wanted just to say that imperfection is a good thing. There is value there because imperfection means diversity, and also means that someone is always at this process of trying to do something better or differently or learn.
Absolutely, absolutely. A bit of a crisis, I always believe. Sometimes when I'm managing or leading an organization, if there's not enough crisis, not enough conflict, you should be worried. So sometimes I would just inject in a crisis, just to make sure that, because you can have some of rough ages, especially in the world dominated by innovation. It's more so that you need to get into and it is something that I am now also beginning to propagate, which is, first is the authentic leadership. The next step that I think, what I am now propagating also is adaptive leadership. In the world of innovation, where you will be expecting things to be coming in to be disrupted, you've got to be. I always ask this question, what does it take for a leader to not be caught like a deer in headlights when something comes in, when a wave of innovation comes in, but instead you ride with the wave of innovation. What it takes is just adaptability. You just need to be comfortable with adapting, and be comfortable with, and this is where, like you said, perfection goes against the grain of adaptive leadership.